today.
All right. Hi, friends. I'm Pooja Desai, your heels and host for Heels and Boots on the Ground. And I would like to welcome you to our episode of The Mindset of a Successful Leader. I'm joined by my two dear friends, business partners, entrepreneurs, and mentors, Vic and Andrea. Vic and Andrea, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to have you both here today. I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourselves, or we can dive right in. So, what would you prefer? Vic, you want to go
Um,
first?
I mean, I could talk for a long time, but I'll make it short. I'm involved in marketing and advertising on a few businesses. Everything that I do is focused on marketing, advertising, and promotions. Um, Playos Agency, DMC Publishing, Diverse Promotions, and I also do some mentoring with Facilitated Connections and VMN. And I'm just excited to be here to find out all of the wonderful things we're going to talk about today.
Thank you so much, Vic. Andrea?
So I come from 30 years maybe of combined marketing, advertising, promotions, sales, events. Um, the list goes on. I've worked for mostly large companies, Toys R Us, Bacardi, Unilever, and Fiat Chrysler. And most recently, for the past 8 years, have been VP of Sales and Marketing at Meadowlands Racing and Entertainment. In East Rutherford, I manage all of the group events that take place at the track. And I am really excited to join you guys.
And what she also forgot to mention is mentor, because that is how our journey here with all three of us began. So I am beyond grateful for the mentorship that I have received from the both of you and the partnership. So, we won't cry on this episode, but I can. I could do that really quickly. But, we're going to teach some of our listeners of what does the mindset of a successful leader mean to them and to you. I think, Vic, with all your experience, what does that mean to you?
I mean, I think I've spoken to a lot of different people, peers, and I've watched a lot of things through the years. I mean, I started my business back in 81. And I think the mindset of a successful leader, you kind of learn that as through iterations. But if you had to distill it down to probably one mindset, is the ability to delegate and the ability to choose people who can do what it is that they're supposed to do, and you can give them the grace to do it. Okay. And a good leader for me creates, I will say, if it's a highway, you've got a guided, side bumpers, so to speak. Okay. And then you let them move within that highway and you help them on their journey. But if you have to micromanage them, or if you're overbearing, you either have the wrong person if you have to always micromanage them, or you have to look inside yourself and say, I've got to let go in order for me to, help them grow, but not be a micromanager, because the long and short of it is, if you have to do their job, what do you need them for?
Yeah, no, I mean, spot on. I think you really hit it. I hear accountability, right? You delegate and then hold them accountable, and then that does really transform into great leadership. So I think that is across all boards. You can really use that knowledge anywhere in any field. Andrea, what about you? What in your field of work, what do you feel a mindset of, what has helped you be successful?
Yeah, so I had a couple things that jumped to mind right away. The first is being a yes person. So always trying to find ways to figure things out versus the no person that's constantly saying things can't happen. So I'm not one of those people. I think there's a way to make everything work. I'm not saying to break the rules, but I do think there's a way of usually coming up with a solution to something. So I feel being a yes person is really important. The other note I had was to be a good listener, because I feel like you can't do everything yourself. Some people feel that they can run the show and they can do everything on their own, but listening on what people want, what they need, what works best, what doesn't work best, their input will make whatever you're doing better and more successful. So I feel listening is really important. And I also feel too that setting small goals on what success means to you. So is it, and evaluating those goals and constantly setting new goals. So I feel like there's always things we're striving. There's a reason we're doing this podcast. There's a reason we all go to work every day. There's a reason we're doing multiple businesses. We don't have, we all have short-term goals for each of those things, and we all have long-term goals. But I feel like goals are meant to be set and hopefully achieved, and then new goals to constantly reinvigorate and reinvent yourself. And then my final one in this, and there's plenty, but the other one was just be hungry, like to succeed. Like if you're not hungry to really want to do well and you're just kind of going with the flow, to me, you're not going to go with the flow. You're just going to go, about your day. But if you're hungry to do a good job and you're hungry to make a difference, it will happen.
Wow. I mean, that's really powerful. I mean, Vic, we could totally relate to that. The hunger, the grit. We've spoken about this on Vic's podcast. Just you have to want to get it, right? And I think that we came from an era where we did, we not to say we fought for what we wanted, but we were very clear and moved towards those intentions of trying to make those things happen. Right. And I think that that's something that, I really feel, accountable in essence to share that with the new generation coming to take over careers and what their worlds will look like, because you have to be hungry. So I really do love that. I often say my magic or superpower is my mindset. What does that mean to you, Vic?
Yeah, I mean, mindset, you do hit on something, and I think mindset is probably where it all begins, because if you're going to be interacting with people, whether they're working for you, whether they're working with you, whether they're a client, whatever, your mindset is going to dictate, in many cases, what that interaction is going to be. Short term, in person, and long term, what their perception of you is in long term if you're starting to build a relationship, right? Whether, like I said, in any one of those categories. But your mindset has to be present. You have to be there. If you're not going to be there, I don't think you can start anything without actually being present. And I only mention that because of where we are in our evolution, with AI and the phones and the thises and the that's, all the distractions that we have. And of course, our regular lives that also creep into that as well. You really kind of want to have a mindset of being there, and that's going to help you be effective in what it is that you're doing. So I think that's, for me, that's where it starts. And then of course there are other things down the road, but that may be a discussion for another time. But that's probably the main thing. Being
present. I love that. Being present with your presence is truly a gift.
Yeah.
And I think that, I've noticed that controlling my mindset is where my magic and power has always kind of evolved, because historically we didn't focus on controlling the mindset or trying to be present. We needed to be everywhere but nowhere at the same time. And that really has been probably one of the best things that I could probably say I've ever heard, is really being present. And thank you for sharing that. That's such a great resource for so many listeners who don't even realize that, they're not being present,
right.
And that's a challenge. Andrea, how about you?
So mine sounds very basic. I thought about this question actually for a little bit and said, in terms of, and whether it's a mindset or just, I don't know what other category it falls under, but mine was to be nice, as simple as that. And it was like, I know so many people that try to show their power or their knowledge through yelling or, trying to micromanage or trying to be threatening or being rude or being disrespectful or, I've never been a person, I don't manage up, I don't manage down, I don't manage in between. Everybody gets treated with the same level of respect. And I feel if you show kindness at all levels, that you're going to succeed in ways you don't even realize, and that will pay back, tenfold. I have a sign actually on my desk at work that says, "Be nice or leave." I personally don't really want to deal with you if you're not nice, because I feel you can accomplish almost anything with people that are nice and give you that respect back. And to me, it sounds like a very simple mind shift, but some people go in thinking they have to be rude, or they have to be tough, or they have to be angry, or they have to have all these different emotions. And to me, I feel like you can accomplish anything just by being nice. Like, I really believe that, because I feel and not everybody is. And I'm at a point in my life I'm at a point in my life and my career right now that I have removed myself from people who aren't nice and who don't treat me nice and with respect.
I mean, that's spot on. Honestly, I think that, historically, we all, have experience with in different phases of life, people who have led us that have not been nice or showed or expressed kindness. And that's one thing that, even in my own career, multiple careers, but the main one that focused on kindness really helped me lead regions. And you're responsible and accountable for yourself first, so you have to show first kindness to yourself, because if you don't even show yourself that grace, it's going to be very difficult to be able to share it or show it to anyone else. So I really think kindness should have always been in place, but it is the way, to your point, Andrea, nobody wants to be led by anyone who's rude or obnoxious anymore, just to climb the corporate ladder, when there's so many different streams of revenue that you physically can do on your own, to the point of being hungry that you made earlier, right?
Yep.
And I think, all of us are kind of a catalyst for that. We've all experienced it, but we are the ones that are paving our own future with kindness. So I think that's definitely, something strong, being present, being kind. I mean, why would you want to be led by someone who's not? I think there's a lot of substance in that. I think, Vic, you and Andrea have shown me so much kindness, and even with how much we have on our plates, when we're all together, we're very present. And
very much so.
Very present. And, I think that, Vic, seeing you and your element in that, being present and being kind for you, Andrea, I think it's really developed so many people around you that, I think that we should really be grateful for people like you and Vic. So, as a knowledge donor, and majority of the listeners are hearing what we're saying right now, but what's one mindset shift that you think could be something that is attainable right away? Vic, let's go with you.
I would think one mind shift which happened for me earlier in my career, and then I hope I've carried it along, is the ability to realize that you can be wrong and you can learn from other people, whether they're working with you, for you, around you, is the ability to learn something from anyone. And I think a lot of people miss that. And there's so many things that are left unlearned because they think they know everything.
That is so strong. And, I'll add to that, even the ones that are working against you, right? Because
right.
yeah, around you, against you. I feel like there's so much strength and power in that statement you just made, because most of my growth really was a reflection of someone working against, not wanting it to actually go the way it needed to. And, historically, or, through my journey, I will say I would turn around and take that as like challenge accepted. I could do this.
Right. It's feeding you as opposed to stopping you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to stop me. I'm going to still do it now. And then I'll invite you back to the table and say, look, remember when you thought we couldn't do it? Look at let me show you.
Yeah, right. And
here's your seat.
Make a place for you at the table.
Yeah. Here's the table. Here's the seat. You can still sit there and watch what you thought wasn't possible. Enjoy it. Andrea, what about you?
I agree. Everything Vic said, 100%. I couldn't agree more. The other thing I added was a big word we throw around, but patience is one that I feel is not everything goes as planned. We can't expect it to go the way it's planned, especially in my world of events. And not all things are things that we agree with. There's many things that are out of our control. But take it in stride and evaluate what's really important. I mean, Vic knows this all the time. We have our little yap sessions of things where I vent and I'm upset, and he's like, Andrea, what the heck? Like, why are you worrying about this? So I think it's and easier said than done. There are things that, everybody has their own things that strike them in a certain way, to behave a certain way and act a certain way. And but I have learned, and honestly, I've learned a ton from Vic personally as his friend and just in business, is that I try to take it in stride. I try not to let whatever it is that bothered me the day go on too long. It may go a couple of days, it may come back in another conversation in a different format, but I do try to just try to bounce it off on what's really truly important, and and just look at the bigger picture.
I love that. I think for me, it's probably being able to pivot at any given time, flexibility, because to your point, things don't always go the way that they're supposed to be planned, or how we think that they should be. So I think that being flexible in any situation and showing the grace at the same time to yourself as well as someone else really does help, reshift that focus for me. I also realized of how am I communicating, not only being a good listener, but am I also communicating the way that the person can relate to? That's been one thing that I probably have worked on, because I realize for example, you, myself, we like-minded people will have like-minded responses. But when you're dealing with in businesses and general public, you also have to realize, like, am I, did they hear me? Did they see me? Did they retain anything that I've said? And then drawing the boundaries, recognizing, okay, I've done it every which way I possibly can. This is not going to work.
Right.
And then stepping back, right, Vic?
Yeah, no, that you're absolutely right. I mean, it comes down to, one of the things I do a lot, with folks, because you also can see cues when you're with them, is I check what it is that I've said to them. So if I'm giving an instruction to somebody who's working with me or something like that, I'll say, so what did I just say to you?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a way to check that they're comprehending it in the way in which it was intended. Or maybe I'm just not being clear. It could absolutely be my fault, but I need to know that in order to change the way I'm communicating. Right. If I don't check it, I'll make an assumption and it's done wrong. And they're like, hey, you told me to do it that way, because I didn't check it. So I think that that's another thing that it was a muscle I had to exercise and say, you know what, you're not getting it the way I intended it. And that's partially my fault,
No, I think spot on. Andrea, what about you?
Wait. I thought we had that question. We're going to cut that part.
Well, I will say that one thing I'll go. I think that to your point, with communicating and how you're delivering the message, also recognizing, for me, I think something that I did a long time ago was recognize that just because the message needs to be delivered doesn't mean it needs to come from you. And that sometimes has power in it.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I use it with family. I use it with friends. I can tell you throughout my career, I recognize that, you have to be able to get the message across, but sometimes you're not it. You can't be the one to deliver that message.
And that's probably the most important thing with our kids. And, we know if kids listen, your parents say one thing, kids don't listen. But if somebody else tells them the same exact message, just not coming from somebody that's equally close to them, all of a sudden it gets done miraculously and something happens. So,
and they're the best things to slice bread.
It's amazing how that works. It's just incredible. But I agree with everything you guys said, and business for sure. And sometimes it is, as leaders, to have somebody reiterate the message back to you. I fully agree, and explain, what you said, and to articulate that. Like, I think it does reinforce that they truly understand something, not just saying, yes, I understand.
Right. Right. Because this is my checklist, right? I have to do it.
Yeah.
My boss said so.
Yeah. And then,
And I think
then they'll go back and say, I don't know what the heck they told me to do.
right. Right, because most of the time you're sitting there like, okay, I'm prepared. No, I'm not. Should I be taking down notes? Should I be? Okay, wait, this has gotten bigger than, it's true.
I think that's part of the environment that you create where somebody can feel comfortable enough to say, you know what? I don't really understand what you're asking me to do. Right? The
Love
environment has to be right for that too. Because if what you were talking about earlier, about people being, overbearing and mean and whatever, you don't want to say anything because you just don't want to piss somebody off. And that's a problem.
No, but an environment where a culture that people feel comfortable enough to speak up and say,
Right.
Vic, please, I didn't understand. Andrea, please guide me again. That's very important for not only for the individual employee or growth of that partnership, but for us too, right? Because we're dealing with so many different people from different walks of life for different reasons, on any one of our multiple businesses or endeavors. So how can I say what works for my communication with Andrea and Vic to translate over? It won't, and I think there's so much power in everything that we have shared with our listeners today, because without people like us having those type of strong force mentors that also help us change our mindset. Vic and Andrea have taught me to think of things differently numerous of times, right? And, how something small deserves just as much as your powerful intention as something big. And that's something that I will say, hands down, I've seen you and Vic nail this to the T. There's not anyone that's ever been in either one of your environments that did not feel like they were part of whatever you were doing for that day. So that mindset of kindness and, including everyone, very powerful, right? Because that really becomes your referral base moving forward.
Yeah, Pooja, to echo what you said, and I would say to all your listeners that if you're in an environment where your opinion is not valued and not respected, that you can't voice an opinion, you're in the wrong environment. And you really, truly need to be in a place that, whether you are an entry-level position or a senior management person, regardless how big or how small that idea is, you should be able to voice your opinion and be able to share ideas and learn and grow with that. Is really important. And if you feel you can't do that, then that's gonna take its toll on your career for sure.
And your mindset.
Well,
it's completely your mindset. You go home thinking you're not valued, and it's not a good feeling, because we've all been there. I'm sure we've all left environments and have come home and said, this was not a great day, and I was treated a certain way, or I felt a certain way, and how do you wake up the next day and start fresh again? So,
yeah.
Good point.
Great point. Well, I can't thank you both enough for joining us today. I think this has been so amazing. Everyone get used to my two friends. They are not only amazing, please just look them up, make sure to support them, but they're going to be frequent flyers, because I don't know how much you enjoyed it, but I love enjoying this and talking to them. So this is going to be amazing. Thank you so much to the both of you. I can't tell you how much your mentorship has been for me. So continue to do the great work that you both do.
I can't wait till the next time.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you,
Bye.